This is a giant deer. It stood about 2 meters at the shoulder, and it carried the whitest antlers of any deer we know of. 3.5 meters, tip to tip. On an animal that shed them and grew them back every single year. You have almost certainly heard why it died. The antlers got too big. Evolution overshot, the story goes, and the animal was crushed by its own ornament. That explanation is over a century old. It is also wrong, and it was abandoned by biologists long before most of us were taught it. But here is the part that should bother you more. We have a lot of this animal. Skulls by the hundred. Whole skeletons. 134 accepted radiocarbon dates. And we still cannot tell you why it disappeared. Last time on this channel, the problem was that we had almost nothing, one tooth structure and no body at all. This is the opposite problem. So what happens when the bones are not the thing you are missing? Start with the name, because the name is wrong twice. It is usually called the Irish elk, but its range ran from Ireland and Iberia across Europe into northern Asia. Ireland is just where the bogs preserved it best. And it was not an elk. Not the North American elk, and not the animal Europeans call an elk, which is the moose. The honest name is giant deer. Megaloceros giganteus. So what was it? For a long time the answer was a guess from the skull, and anatomists put it with the red deer. In 2005, Adrian Lister and colleagues pulled mitochondrial DNA from the bones and combined it with the anatomy. It did not come out with red deer. It came out with fallow deer, those small, palm-antlered deer you can see in a European park today. Not one paper being lucky either. A separate group got the same result the following year. Then 3 months ago, something stronger and something to hold carefully. A preprint, not yet peer-reviewed. 9 nuclear genomes. Nuclear DNA is a far better test. It confirmed the fallow-deer relationship, and dated the split at roughly 3.5 million years. It also found something that explains the old confusion. Gene flow interbreeding with ancestral service lineages. So the anatomists who saw red deer in that skull were not simply careless. There really is service in there. Just not where they thought. So the name is settled and the family is settled. Which leaves the thing everybody thinks they already know, the antlers. The idea that the antlers doomed the animal comes from orthogenesis, the belief that a lineage can lock onto a direction and keep going past the point of usefulness. Population genetics pushed orthogenesis out of mainstream biology in the 1930s. The antler story was already dead for 30 years before the paper people credit with killing it. In 1974, Stephen Jay Gould measured antlers and skulls across living deer, and plotted this one against them. Antler size does not scale 1-to-1 with body size. It scales faster. Bigger deer carry disproportionately bigger antlers, that is normal across the whole family. Put the giant deer on that line and it lands about where a deer that size should. Ordinary deer scaling, taken to a large body. But be precise about what that shows. Gould's sample was small, and the species in it were not statistically independent. Landing near an extrapolated line does not prove the antlers were cheap, or irrelevant to how the species ended. He killed the runaway story. Nothing more. What they were for is inference, not observation. Antlers across living deer are weapons and signals. These were on adult males only, regrown yearly at enormous cost. An ornament that expensive is hard to fake. That is the standard reading, but nobody has watched one use them. So, not doomed by its own antlers. Which puts the real question back on the table. What did kill it? The popular answer is that it died at the end of the Ice Age, about 10,000 years ago, in Ireland. Both halves of that are wrong. It did not go out everywhere at once. This extinction was staggered across thousands of years and thousands of kilometers. The Irish material, the famous material, the Museum Mount material, is late glacial. Roughly 12,500 years ago. The last accepted records are not in Ireland at all. They are far to the east, the Urals, western Siberia, around 7,660 years ago. Which means the giant deer outlived its Irish population by roughly 5,000 years. Be careful with that number. You will see it written as radiocarbon years. It isn't, it is a calibrated age. Two different scales. And a bigger caution. That youngest date rests on very few specimens. It proves the animal was alive then, not that it died out straight after. A fossil record gives you the last animal you found. Never the last animal that lived. Now, the causes, and here the honest answer is that the argument is live. The best supported driver is habitat. This was an animal of open, productive country, and as the Holocene came in, that country closed. A male regrowing 35 kilograms of bone a year needs a lot of good feeding. Take that away and you have a problem. And that is supported by several independent lines rather than one correlation: the chronology, the pollen, the distribution, the teeth, and the isotopes. But it got warmer and they died is too small. They had survived earlier warm swings, and the eastern population lived on for thousands of years. Then in 2021, a genetic study found something that reframes the question entirely. The decline had started long before any of this. Reading population history out of mitochondrial genomes, researchers found genetic diversity falling from around 48,000 years ago and accelerating through the last glacial maximum. That is peer-reviewed, and it changes the shape of the story. This was not a healthy species that hit a wall. It had been shrinking for 40,000 years. And the preprint pushes that further, reporting extremely low diversity and a raised load of probably harmful mutations in an animal that was already fragile. If that holds up, the Holocene did not need to be a knockout blow. It only needed to be the last one. Which brings us to humans, because somebody always asks. People and giant deer overlapped across Eurasia. That much is certain. But overlap is not causation, and the evidence a hunting extinction would leave is missing. No dense record of kill sites at the end. No butchered bone assemblages. No wave of disappearance tracking human arrival. Hunting is possible as a local contribution. As the main, range-wide cause, it is not supported. For candidate pressures, habitat, nutrition, a long genetic decline, people, and no agreed share for any. And now the uncomfortable part. Because I told you at the start that we have a lot of this animal. That is true. It is also less useful than it sounds. Ballybetagh, in Ireland. The richest giant deer site there is, dug through the middle of the 19th century. More than 100 skulls came out of it. Whole skeletons, about 6. Not hundreds, that number gets repeated, and it is wrong. And every one of those animals was male. Not most. All of them. Which tells you immediately that you are not looking at a population. You are looking at a filter. The reading is a bachelor herd, males wintering apart from the females, dying at a waterhole. And within that, the dead skew young, and skew towards small antlers. The animals that could not get through winter. So the most famous assemblage of this species is one sex, one season, one cause of death, one place. Superb evidence for how a stag was built. Close to useless for the sex ratio, the herd structure, or the population trend. Which is what I actually want to leave you with. Why doesn't a pile of bones answer the question? Because bones record what an animal was built like. They do not record what happened to it. A skeleton gives you height, antler span, age at death. It cannot give you the share of blame between a closing forest, a thinning gene pool, a hard winter, and a hunter. Last time the problem was one organ and no animal. This time we have the animal, in quantity, and the same answer is missing. The gap only moved from the specimen to the explanation. And the newest attempt to close it is 3 months old, and has not been through review yet. That is not a failure of the science. That is what the front of it looks like while you are standing on it. Next time, an animal we have actual film of. Moving pictures of a living one, and people still argue about whether it is gone.